Yes.
There we go. Can you guys see that? Is that okay?
Yes.
I can see it.
Okay, great. Okay,
Good for here, Aaron.
great.
Thanks very much, moderator.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, much
my
appreciated.
pleasure. Yeah, my
Yeah.
my pleasure. Yeah, yeah. Just
Kiyomi, sorry. I didn't see your name before.
Yes, my name is Kiyomi, and I'm just happen to be helping you. Because that's only because I love extensive reading. I just want to be part of this exciting event. Yes.
Did they pay you
Thank
to
you.
say that?
Well, yeah, say it louder, louder.
Yeah, louder. Yeah.
Rebecca,
how come you didn't shave your head like the rest of the presenters?
You know,
We're not,
change my family name to Campbell. I need to be another
There you
Campbell.
it's not shaved. I wish I could shave it. Naturally falls out every day.
All that stress. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, it's time now at 12:55 Japan time, and wherever you are, thank you for joining this exciting event. So now another presentation by Jodie Campbell and the colleagues, and transitioning university extensive reading program from print to digital books and reader to X reading. So those over to you guys.
Hey,
thank you.
Thank you, Kiyomi. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. We're part of an extensive reading research group at Kyoto University of Foreign Studies in Kyoto, Japan. And the purpose of our research was to report on the transition process from print to digital books in our university-wide extensive reading program. However, because of the pandemic, during the academic year 2020 to 2021, April to April here in Japan, access for our students to our university's physical extensive reading library, I mean the actual paperback graded reader books themselves, that was limited. Also, our existing extensive reading program had been using the reading management program, mReader. However, in April 2020, that was replaced with the online reading system X Reading. And the goals of our study was to examine the performance of students using a digital library of graded readers on X Reading. And we wanted to capture their extensive reading experience during the pandemic. And we did a survey with that. And we also wanted to compare both their extensive reading performance and experience using a digital library via X Reading with previous cohorts using a physical library tracked by mReader. So I'll pass the mic over to Aaron Campbell now. We aren't related, but we're both bald. We're both bald. And
Okay.
he'll give you some information about our program, extensive reading program.
Thank
Aaron,
you,
it's all
Jodie.
yours.
Okay, here we go. So, all right, let me get onto the screen here. So, as Jodie said, we have an extensive reading program. It's rather large. It started back in 2011, and we, through the use of mReader to track our student reading, it has really been a way for us to grow and scale the program. That's one of the beauties of a tool like mReader, is it tracks that student reading through the use of simple quizzes, as all of you know. We have about 2,200 reader students who actually read. There's about 2,700 in the program, somewhere between 50 and 60 teachers, and about 100 classes and students of various majors. Now, we have a physical library that we've built up over time. It's now got about 22,000 books, and a total of just over 3,000 titles of graded readers, leveled readers, and various children's books. And so we have been, we've been like a well-oiled machine over the last, especially the last 5 or 6 years. We have an active program. There's a lot of involvement from the teachers. A lot of students are doing reading. It's a great program. And then suddenly, the pandemic hit, and the university informed us that the physical library would no longer be available, and they didn't know when it would be coming back. And looking at the situation, we knew it could be a long time. So we all made a decision to migrate to X Reading, which is as you know, is not only a way to track extensive reading, but it's also a digital library. You can see here the minimum word count goals per semester for our English majors. It's a progression from the first year in the spring all the way up to the second year in the fall. And of course, you know, moving to a digital library, a new tool without any preparation during a very chaotic time when teachers were really focused on migrating to using tools they've never used before, like you know, MS Teams and Zoom, and trying to adapt their courses in such a short time frame. There wasn't really time to prepare, so we just threw our students into X Reading without much preparation. A lot of the teachers didn't know, really, they'd never used it before, so it was all very new to not only the students but also the teachers. And so that led us to, about halfway through the year, start asking some questions like, you know, what's the difference in terms of how students are carrying out their extensive reading with this digital library versus what they used to do in the physical library and tracking with mReader. So what is their experience like? And in addition to their experience and how they're performing in terms of word counts and books read, how did it compare? And we knew that the comparison was not going to be, you know, entirely a fair comparison, because the context is so different. Being in a pandemic where students are not in the classroom, they're separate from the teachers and other students, and a lot of them are isolated and on their own. So we knew that this would be, like I said, not necessarily a fair comparison, but something interesting to look at. And maybe it would lead to further questions. So that was kind of our outset, and that's what we're here to present in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So one of the first things we took a look at was, at the end of the year, we looked at the average number of words read per student. And we saw that there was a significant difference. In 2019, our students read on average about 245,000 words for the year. But with X Reading, it was about 136,000. And this was not really surprising to us because of the circumstances. And now, some of the factors here that are involved is the extreme learning curve. Like I said, teachers were distracted and focused on just getting through the tremendous number of new tools and new environments they had to use. And so there wasn't the same kind of onboarding and help for students in terms of the extensive reading. The students themselves were going through a similar type process. We also lacked that shared physical space, which a lot of our teachers use for silent sustained reading and for getting students to show the books they're reading and talking about them. And reading together in that physical space can really do wonders for students' motivation and feeling part of a reading community. And I think the biggest factor of all, just based on conversations with students and teachers, was the fact that there's some serious screen fatigue going on. I mean, when students have 15 classes that are 100 minutes long for 14 straight weeks, and a lot of those are live, you know, sessions on Teams, and so they're staring into the computer screen all day long. When they finally get some free time, you know, the idea of spending more time looking at a screen to do their reading assignments is daunting and it's tiring. So we knew that the reading levels would not be as high as they were with physical books. And of course, there were a few technical issues in the spring, which were minor, but it did lead to a few hiccups along the way. I think X Reading that organization was overwhelmed in that spring semester. They had to migrate to a new server, and it led to a little bit of confusion for a few weeks, but that's a minor issue. But I think that the digital fatigue and the learning curve and that lack of being in the classroom could account for that difference. Now, we also looked at, if you look at the average number of quizzes taken in 2019 with the physical library, it was 49 versus 74 with X Reading. So there was a significant number of more books that students were reading on X Reading, even though the word counts were much lower. And if you look at just the percentage of students, like if you take a look at the areas in blue there, 300,000 words and up, we had about, it looks like about 28% of students in 2019 with the physical library who were achieving higher word counts. But with the digital library, they weren't. They were doing a lot less reading, but a lot more books. And we attribute part of this to the fact that there's just an abundance of very short books. We counted something like 336 titles of books from publishers like ELI, eFuture, Sunshine Books, the WAO Corporation, that were very short. And if you look at our physical library, we don't have as many short books. In fact, a lot of our level 1, like M-Reader level 1 books are over 500 words. They're between 500 and 1,000. So I think part of that, in addition to the convenience of having the entire library in your pocket with X Reading, as opposed to checking out, let's say, 10 different really low level books and having to carry them around with you and turn them back in on time so you don't get in trouble. I think that convenience factor plus the screen fatigue, students just don't want to look at the screen for a very long time, really explains this. I mean, they're reading, they know they have to read, so they choose short books and they're reading those short books. And then we have a lot of lower level students especially in our first year program in the English department. So this is not surprising, but it's interesting. And so we wanted to point that out as part of our inquiry into what was actually going on during this pandemic time. Now, another aspect of X Reading that it makes it very, very easy for students to listen to the audio. We gave a presentation about an hour and a half ago on audio use, and we found that not that many students were actually listening to the audio, but the ones that were actually had higher performance in terms of the number of words they were reading, quote unquote reading, maybe audio enhanced reading. And they had a lot of positive feedback about their experience and how the audio was really helping them. So this was another aspect of the transition from the physical library to the digital library that made it very, very easy for students to access that audio. And this is something that we intend to introduce to students in a more systematic way. Actually, we have been doing that this year. This data was from 2020, but that's another issue that we're now dealing with more than we used to with the physical library, because it was a lot harder to check out the CDs for certain books, and there weren't that many available, et cetera. Now, we also sent out a survey to students. It was a 6-point Likert survey in Japanese, and it's just sort of measured students' perceptions and experiences by providing them with simple statements. And we grouped them according to whether they were connected to motivation or fluency or how efficiently they're doing the extensive reading. And of all the different items, after the analysis, we found that 3 of them were significant. The rest were pretty much, the same, or not that many differences involved, and they were all related to motivation. Basically, in 2020 with the digital library, we compared it to a cohort that we had back in 2015 when we delivered that survey that was using the physical library, and saw that there was a slight decrease in students' perception of reading being fun and beneficial, and just that intrinsic motivation factor fell slightly. But again, this wasn't really surprising given the extreme situation that the students were in, having to be away from the teachers in the classroom and staring at those screens for such a long time. That could demotivate any of us, I think. So that's not really all that surprising either. Now, we did ask the question to the second year students. Now, these second year students in 2019, they were using our physical library to do the extensive reading, and then they switched to a completely digital library in 2020. And so we asked them, which did you prefer? And about 70% of the students said they preferred doing the digital reading. Now, why they preferred that, we're not 100% sure. We did ask them that question, but you have to take this question with a grain of salt, because students could interpret it a little bit differently in the sense that, well, I can't even go to the physical library. So of course I prefer reading on digital books because it's a lot more convenient. And indeed, when we asked them the reason for these choices, they were all about the same. But you could see that with the digital library, which is in blue, the students found them a little bit more easy to read, slightly more convenient, which is not surprising, the convenience factor. Now, easy to read would be yomi yasui in Japanese. If you look farther to the right, the easy English, I think this has to do with the language itself, like the English being easier. I don't quite understand the difference between that. Maybe one of my fellow researchers could point that out after the session is over if anybody's interested. But anyway, those were some of the reasons for those different preferences. So basically, in summary, with this short inquiry into this transition process, we found that this transition to digital books led to more books read, but with lower word counts. There was a higher number of books read, mostly due to convenience and abundance of the books being readily available, and shorter, a lot of them shorter. Slight downturn in intrinsic motivational factors that could be very much pandemic related, and a higher preference for digital books. Again, that could also be pandemic related. We feel that following up on this in a more slightly quote unquote normal situation where students have access to both the physical library and the digital library would be ideal, because then students then have the choice. And actually that will occur this fall in our program. Our university is finally going to open up the physical library again, but with these COVID numbers taking off, we're still not sure if students will have access to it or not. But for the moment, it's moving in that direction. And we'd like to see, when students are given that choice, what they choose to do and why they choose to do it. And I think that would be a much fairer type of comparison. Wow, this time really flies by. There's a lot more we could talk about, little issues that came up, that some of them are specific to our program, not just this in general, extensive reading in general, but certain things that we would like to talk more about and maybe research more in the future coming up. But anyway, we're coming to the end of this 20-minute session, and I feel it would be good to open up this last few minutes for any questions that any of you might have, and before we go into the breakout rooms. Or if any of my fellow researchers would like to add anything, please do so. Thank you, guys. Does anybody have any questions or comments for us?
One comment.
Hi, yes, Paul. Yeah, go ahead.
From just my speculation is one reason students read more books, and as you said, the shorter books on X reading, is because in a typical physical library, those books are going to be checked out, and then they're stuck having to read books that they don't want to. I think that makes a big difference. It's just they would, if you had an unlimited number of short books in your library, you would probably find a similar behavior.
Yeah, that could be another reason as well. Sure.
I was thinking, did your students take the X reading placement test?
Well, I work in a different department than my co-researchers, and in my department we did not. And I don't think they did. Although this year we did. Last year when we got this data, the 2020 data, we didn't do it. But this year we did it in my department. Yeah.
I switched over to X reading last fall, and I've used it again this semester. And I have not analyzed my data carefully, but I have a suspicion that my students ended up reading lower level books, shorter books in those 2 semesters than they had previously done. They did take the placement test in my school. So it could be a factor of that, but as you say, maybe some of you didn't even take it. So who can say why?
They are placed in, they are put into levels based on their, which puts them into different class levels. And then the reading levels are based on each class depending on which class they're in.
And that's by TOEIC score, right, Ian?
That's by TOEIC score, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It'd be nice to see a compilation of all that data if you can manage it sometime.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I haven't actually checked the chat area. Are there any questions? Does anybody else have questions?
I think Jodie's been taking care of most of the answers, I think.
I see.
Yeah, there were nothing yet.
One from George Jacobs.
Ah,
Did the
yeah.
teachers model online reading? Can you answer to that question?
That's a good question. We have so many teachers. I don't know. I know in my department, we did not do a lot of modeling of online reading, although we did do a lot of talking about the books that we're reading and talking about the process of reading, but no modeling. I don't know about in the English department what you guys did, but there's so many teachers. I have a feeling that the teachers are doing different things. Some of our teachers are very motivated and into extensive reading, and you can see it in their student performances.
Yeah.
And others are just kind of going through the motions and maybe not as into it. And that also is reflected in student performance. So
yeah, we have an online teacher's manual and also a student manual, which we hope takes care of the bulk of the students and teachers. But yeah, as Aaron said, it depends very much on the teacher and how motivated they are. And of course, the students' motivation as well.
The teachers are also being overwhelmed by the big workload, shifting from physical face-to-face teaching to online teaching. So I don't think they can afford to model reading. We needed to educate teachers more.
Marta asked a good question about cheating, and I just said that Paul, you're giving a presentation tomorrow or Sunday about that? Sunday?
Cheating is tomorrow, Saturday.
Saturday, okay.
Saturday.
So Marta, that might be good to check out. I'll be there, Paul.
Yes, yeah. We have quite a lot to talk about. Aaron, do you mind if I share that video again with I'm sure some people saw it before, but Aaron made such a good introductory video that, it's for his students and it's
oh yeah, feel free, that's fine. Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna put that in the chat because I just found it. I've shared it with a lot of people and they've said it was really helpful.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for all your participation from the audience and all the presenters. And